of the biggest races in California is actually one of the quietest during this election cycle. The race for U.S. Senate got a lot of attention before the primary, with 3 powerful Democrats and a Republican baseball star fighting for the job. Now it's down to Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff and former National League All-Star Steve Garvey on the Republican side. I recently spoke with both of those candidates, and we start with Steve Garvey and an issue he's made central to his campaign: immigration.
The establishment of cartels in the United States and the human trafficking, especially women and children. And lately I've thought a lot about what's happening to women in this country. And I think, and I will look at this as next U.S. Senator, on this abuse of women, the attack on women, and let's put together something that's going to protect you, my daughters, my wife.
And I'm trying to just think about what you're saying here. Is that protecting them from immigrants or from illegal immigration?
Well, I think, let's talk off here. All the victims basically have been women. So the underside of these illegal aliens, and now we've determined that there are 30,000, 40,000 criminals, murderers that are out there, are going to attack the weakest. And they attack women. Violent crimes against them. So I think we should start to talk about how we protect our women.
What is one specific thing that you would do to make life more affordable for Californians?
Well, let's get back to gas and oil. Let's open up the spigots again. I think once that was done was the beginning of really strapping Americans, and the cost of living skyrocketing and inflation going double digits over the last 4 years.
So when you say open up the spigots again, what does that look like?
Well, it's a rough term for let's assume that there is climate change, and I really believe in that. But I think there was so much of a rush to judgment, and to tell the people you're going to in 10 years have to buy all electric vehicles, without thinking, without going through a process of testing these ideas and going forward.
So your name came up very recently in the state when former President Trump made an appearance in Southern California.
Will you endorse Steve Garvey against Adam Schiff?
I don't know much about Steve Garvey. I think he's made a big mistake because he hasn't reached out to MAGA.
He said he was not endorsing you because you had not asked, and I quote, "I think he's made a big mistake because he hasn't reached out to MAGA, and if he doesn't have MAGA, he's got no chance." So what is your reaction to that?
Well, you and I talked from the beginning when I started this. My race was going to be very unique. It was going to be extremely difficult. I didn't get into this because it was easy. I got into it because it was hard, because we want to get back to a two-voice state. And I only wanted the endorsements of police and sheriffs and first responders.
You did come to Sacramento before the primary and spent time at some of the encampments in this area. At the time, there was some criticism that you didn't have specifics as to what you would do on a federal level to help. Have you developed that now, 10 months later?
Yes. One of the first things I'll do as the next elected U.S. Senator would be to call for a federal audit as to where that $20 billion went to the homeless. And by the way, last year, homelessness increased 15% in California, with leading state in the union with homeless.
What would you want people to know about your ability to manage public finances, given your personal finances?
Well, I might not be on the finance committee, but I also think that I will somebody that, again, is very diligent. I have my strengths. I have some areas I'm not as strong in, but I'm honest and straightforward. If I do make a mistake, I am diligent in correcting that.
People in California may wonder, would you back a federal ban on abortion?
No.
Okay. And is there anything that you want our viewers to know about your position? Well,
my position, has been consistent. As a senator, I have to listen to the voice of the people, and the voice of the people was for a bill, constitutional bill for abortion. So I pledge to support that. Am I Catholic? Yes. Do I believe in life at conception? Yes. That's my opinion. But I also believe in the people that I represent, and we'll work tirelessly to make sure that their voice is heard.